from which we will dedicate 10 minutes to answering any questions that you want to ask. Feel free to ask in Indonesian or English. And without further ado, let's start the session and turn our attentions to the speakers, Priscilla and Cindy. Firstly, Priscilla and Cindy, I'm sure most of the audience know who you are, but for those who don't, could you please introduce yourselves to us? Let's start with Priscilla.
Halo semua, my name is Priscilla. We're going to do the session both in Indonesian and English, so feel free to just speak with whatever you're comfortable with. A little bit about myself. I was actually born in Jakarta and I lived there. I lived in Kelapa Gading for like 9 years, and I moved to California where I went to school and also grew up. I actually started my career in Silicon Valley as a marketer at Facebook, but shortly after I was really excited to move to Berlin for many reasons. I studied abroad here like 6 years ago and really love the city. It's very vibrant. There's a lot to do. It's very international. And on top of that, there's a really big tech community. So transitioning out of Silicon Valley to Berlin just made sense, both personally and professionally. That's a little bit about my background. I'm really excited to meet some of you from different parts of Germany and also share more about my journey and also answer any questions later today. Thanks for joining.
Yes. And what about you, Cindy?
Well, I'm Cindy, and a Java developer at Intel Munich. I was born in Bandung, and just about when I was 6 years old, I moved to Bogor. So we moved to Bogor and I grew up there basically. I came to Germany at the end of 2012 as an au pair, and then decided to do my degree in business and computer science, which is called Wirtschaftsinformatik. And then I started my career journey, first of all, as a C++ software tester for simulation project in Airbus. That one was with a working student contract. And then afterwards, I moved to Audi as an intern and wrote my thesis with them as well about automatic logistic layout generator. And now I have been at Intel for almost 3 years, currently developing a trace and debug tool for the Intel firmware and system hardware.
All right. Yes. So you two have had several job changes in the past. In Germany, what motivated those job changes, and how did you go about to look for those new job opportunities in Germany? Let's start now with Cindy.
Right. So I kind of want to experience working in different fields. So like my first job, it was at Airbus, and Airbus is a European multinational corporation. And at that time, my job there was heavily related to computer science, whereas the second one, the Audi is a German automobile manufacturer. It really was the combination of the business and computer science. After knowing both worlds, and then based on my interest and the opportunities at that point of time, I decided to further develop my computer science part and go with the American multinational company. So yeah, that's the background of it.
All right. What about you, Priscilla?
Yeah, I actually forgot to mention my current job, but I'm currently a product marketing team lead at a startup in Berlin called Celix. And I think my biggest motivation was honestly after working at Facebook and having the foundation in digital marketing so strongly, I wanted to take a chance and go into the startup scene, specifically in Berlin, because A, I love the city, B, because there's a lot of opportunities in Berlin for startups. So I started at a small startup called Honeypot, and during my time there, it got acquired by Xing. Maybe many of you know it as like German LinkedIn. So it was definitely interesting to work with the co-founders and seeing them go through like the different cycles of like investor pitches and also going through that process of scaling up a startup into merging that with a big company. So that was just like fascinating from a marketing standpoint, but also from an industry standpoint. I've never really been into the world of like VCs and also M&As. So after my time at Zing/Honeypot, I actually moved to a VC firm because I wanted to explore more of that and see what that would look like from a marketing and business development standpoint, which led me to Noah Advisors. After some time, it was definitely eye-opening and also very interesting. I definitely met a lot of different just types of people throughout like Switzerland and also Germany, but I really missed the more product side of working in a company as opposed to a VC. So I jumped into Cellix, where I now work as a product marketing team lead and build my team of other product marketers there. And for me, I think the biggest motivation really came down initially to the city, because I really wanted to move to Berlin, experience what it's like living here and working internationally out of the US. And I think from a career point of view, there was just so many opportunities that were English speaking. And given that I speak fluent English, but not so fluent German, I thought it would have been a much easier entryway out of all the other cities in Germany.
Yes, certainly Berlin is the hub for startups in Germany. There's a Silicon Valley, like a short, like an alley where a lot of,
Yes,
a lot of startups are. Yeah. And so I think you two, could you please highlight how you found those new opportunities in Germany? Perhaps it was through LinkedIn or through friends, or and Priscilla.
Yeah, of course. So for me, that's actually a really good question. And that's a lot of people ask me that, like both Indonesian friends and people in the US. I looked for it first on LinkedIn. And later I discovered, this is specific to Berlin, called berlinstartupjobs.com. And there's just so much information and resources and opportunities there from different types of backgrounds like engineering, marketing, design, sales, you name it, like across the board. And the people, or at least the types of companies that post there, are really active. So they either like get back to you right away or give you like honest feedback on what happens. And I remember when I used berlinstartupjobs.com, they even provided the emails of the recruiters. So I would just email them personally and like introduce myself. And to me, I actually got so much like response rate from that website compared to LinkedIn. So that was how I entered the Berlin scene. But as I changed jobs, so in Berlin, I've moved to 3 different companies, and those 2 other ones I found through LinkedIn.
Yes. And do you have a Zing account? Is that used since Germans use it?
So for me, I haven't really used Zing yet, even though I did ended up like my company got acquired by Zing. So no, but I would encourage you to do that, because all my German friends, they have found more opportunities, at least German speaking opportunities, through Zing.
All right. And Cindy?
Yeah, about that link, I think we are going to provide everyone, the participants as well, right? About the list of the link, because it's going to be interesting as well. For me, I look at Zing and LinkedIn as well, but I focused around Bavaria area. I was in Ingolstadt and Munich, so I was looking directly into the Google Maps and look for the company itself, and went to the website, look for the opportunities and apply there. That work with most of my applications actually. Also, the first job that I got, it was actually from a friend recommendation, and some people said, or like now that I am in the company and interviewed some newcomers, it will be seen more beneficial if you are recommended by someone else within the company. So definitely it's a good opportunity to network and actually, try to, hey, let me get into your company kind of thing.
I think also an interesting question that I just thought about. So Cindy, you've worked at Audi and then Intel, an American company, and Audi, a German company. What were the difference between in terms of the culture of the firm? Was the Merck? What's the differences, and which one do you prefer?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting actually. Well, the German company obviously is in German, so that's the first thing. It, it's the language itself is different, and the culture is different as well. With the European multinational company as well as the American multinational company, they tend towards more, I will say, relaxed, but that is my personal opinion. Whereas with the German one, they are kind of work hard, play hard type of mentality, which is also nice. I mean, I love working with Germans. They are really competent. They really they like what they are doing. They are proud of what they do, and that is one of the key points that I really like to take for myself as well and improve.
All right. Yes. So going back to the main topic of the conversation, from your experiences, what factors should people consider as they are switching jobs, and how should they balance those factors? Let's start with Priscilla.
Yeah, so I think these are such valid factors to consider, especially when you're entering a new field or a role. A mentor once said to me, actually multiple mentors said this, that like, if you find an opportunity, you should look into three things. One, location. So like city, where is this job located? I mean, maybe these days with remote work, it's a bit more flexible, but second, the role and the job, like the role, what you'd be doing. And third, the company. So if you have two out of those three things, location, role, and company, you're already at a really, really great spot. So that's a structure and framework that I've always considered. However, when I moved to Germany, I actually had a different approach because location-wise, I knew I really just wanted to aim for Berlin. And for roles, I was quite open as long as they were in marketing. And company was the factor that I kind of that I was lenient on, because ultimately I can't go back to like a Facebook or a big tech since I didn't speak German fluently at the time. So the factors I considered were actually growth opportunities. So how much can I learn from my peers? What did my manager work in the past? What is she doing now? And who are my colleagues? Like, where did they work in also like in the past? And who are the founders? So in my case, like when I was looking for startups, I was really doing a lot of background checks on who the people I'll be working with, because I wanted to grow from them, not just from the current job, but also from their previous experiences. So growth opportunity is a big one to consider. I think secondly, when I was going into Germany, another one is industry. I realized when you build a portfolio or reputation of working in industries that are overlapping with each other, you can really sell yourself as you're choosing your next jobs. Because ultimately, if you have a lot of experiences, let's say in like social media platforms, or even let's say you're in the automotive industry and you continue like going into that, of course you don't have to, but I realized that it's a really good selling point, especially if you're aiming for roles that are a bit higher than maybe where you stand. And I also feel like having that industry knowledge gives you an edge when you're trying to negotiate in salaries. So sometimes I look into industries and reflect on whether or not it's trending or can set me up for future success when I'm trying to like navigate my career maybe 5 or 6 years down the line. So growth opportunities in industries are definitely two that I consider outside of location, role, and company.
And in working in a startup, did that what was it like working at a startup? Did you have more growth opportunities than working at Facebook? Was the role more of a general role, and while also being specialist role as in marketing, but you also take on other jobs? And can you please specify more on that?
Yeah, of course. I thought like honestly, after moving out of big tech and going into startup, I noticed like a few differences in like how I was seen in the job market. So the Facebook opportunity gave me a lot of room to sell myself and also already establish like a certain level of credibility. But I do feel like while I was working there, the day-to-day work was a bit more repetitive. And you know that phrase like a cog in a machine, I'd say that was more so aligned to my role at Facebook. However, the selling point after leaving that opportunity was huge, especially moving to Berlin, because a lot of people were interested in how bigger corporates run their logistics and their marketing strategies in a way that they did. So that was a helpful selling point, like the company name. But I do want to say I learned a lot more and have more experiences from working at a startup. I want to caution that it really depends on the startup, because now I've worked in two different ones. The first one was Honeypot, and the second one was, oh, the second one right now is Celix. And I feel like, you know, so I'm learning a lot in my current company because the people around me are very, very smart and just really good at their job. But like sometimes in startups, it's not always that case. It could just be you have to like figure it out yourself and you might not be learning as much as you could. So it just really depends. But all in all, working in a startup gives you much more scope and visibility and leadership opportunities in your day-to-day for sure.
Mhm. And just to reiterate for Cindy, so from your experiences, what factors should people consider as they're switching jobs, and how should they balance those factors? Let's go to Cindy. Yes, Cindy.
Yeah, I really like that point that Priscilla mentioned actually, because I do find them important as well, especially the improvement opportunities, the growth opportunities, because it is important to be able to expand, but also stay relevant with the trends at the moment. And I focus more on the company in that case as well, trying to see if the company can offer you the benefits, such as maybe working on a small projects with other teams within the department, or possibilities to attend seminars, events, and workshops, budget for books, subscriptions to learning platforms, etc., etc. Um, other than that, I do move when I find a new jobs, I try to think about the three factors in my life. The first one is my priority life value, which is the core, and to try to find out what is your short-term goal. For example, maybe it's the remote work, maybe it's the high reputation, recognition, high salary, independence, location, as Priscilla said as well, or maybe it's stability or work-life balance, something like that. And then the second one is your passion, what you are actually good at. Or it can also be the path to your dreams. You have a dream, and it is one way to get it is by doing this job. So that is definitely one of the three criteria that I consider looking to a new job. I mean, doesn't need to be fulfilled all three of them. Maybe a bit hard to actually fulfill all of them, but at least one of them.
True.
Yes, I think another like interesting article I read the other day was how it's harder for newcomers to a company to perform, to show their performance when they're working from home. And so I think from a perspective of someone who's been working at a company, was it harder? Is it harder for you to perform working from home, or maybe like show your work right now working from home? Yes, just highlight like your insight into that.
Cindy or me or?
Oh yeah, Cindy.
Okay, sorry. Um, well, it has pro and cons, definitely. I mean, what I see, let's start with the cons first. The bad news is that you can't really connect with other people on the personal level. Like it's hard to actually see. Yeah, well, try to connect. I mean, I believe that in a company, if you do good project, it's all, well, it's not all of them, but it's the teams are an important key. Like you have to have a great team that is solid and together and complement each other. And being working from home is kind of it's a difficult situation for that. But then the pro side is if you prefer not to talk to people directly, then it's definitely your way to go. You can write them, which is very easy, or you can share screen and you start coding, for example, to show what you actually mean to say.
Mhm, mhm. And from the leader's side point of view, from Priscilla, how do you what's your strategy to making sure that the work of your your the people under you that you lead, to make sure that their work is being recognized, or their yeah. Can you please highlight more on that?
Yeah, I think part of being a manager is making sure that you're listening to your team members and checking in quite often. I think working virtually has really emphasized that practice for sure. So for me, it's really like alignment, and having casual meetings is equally as important as having one that's very work focused. So typically, like on almost like every other day or like every day, I would spend like 15 to 20 minutes just to have like a nice coffee chat with some of my team members, just hearing more about their day, if they have any plans for the weekend or later today, or what they're struggling with, most with right now. So I think getting that personal perspective is really important. And I literally set up like 15-minute coffee chats, not only with people under me, but also people like alongside me and also above me, because I do feel like you miss out on that like water cooler talk. So for anyone here trying to switch jobs remotely, I actually did that and I got promoted. So I don't think that it's impossible to show performance, even if you onboarded remotely. Some tips that I can share is to always be very proactive with your communication. Over communication is literally so much better than like little to no communication. So for me, what like we use Slack as a form of company alignment, and I'm always like either the first or second to first to reply to like a group thread, just to show I'm present. Especially when you're new, you want people to like get a feel of who you are and that you're eager to join the company. So really be present, especially when like they forward you a lot of like emails that include a group. Just acknowledge that you read it or like make a comment about it. So I think a lot of those things really helped in my first 6 months that ultimately led to the promotion. So just showing that you're present through like Slack, email, or even initiating like a group, when like we typically have like marketing weeklies. And I remember in the beginning of the like meeting, I would always just like say, hey, and like initiate the conversation before the real meeting starts. So those are helpful tips to consider, especially when you're onboarding remotely.
Yeah, so being proactive is important during this pandemic time, working from home. Yes. And so, like, from our next question, from your experiences, what challenges should people be aware of when switching jobs? And how did you overcome these challenges? And let's start with Cindy.
Sure. Well, that is like actually good points about what Priscilla said, to be proactive. Um, I think that is very relevant for when you are looking for a new job, or like you when you get into the new job. When you go into new job, it's that everything is new, new team, new technology, new conventions, and that is definitely one of the three that I would think of. Like, first of all, if I think about it, I need to be aware of the situation, be mindful, be empathetic, trying to express your thoughts clearly, because everybody has different backgrounds and you don't really know that yet. So try to express it and over communicate your mean, and also be prepared, because it's going to be a learning phase for you. And in that way, I would find my best way to communicate, which is, for example, as I said, through codes, if that is easier than with the language barrier, for example, or written. If it's through chat, maybe it's easier because then you can read it through first before you actually send it. And the third one is be proactive. Don't be afraid to ask where to find the information if you don't really know that, or who is the contact person if you have this problem. And before that is during the preparation as well. I was actually lacking self-confidence and undervalue myself. So it was nice, but I think that is kind of like in the background of some people as well. And to overcome that, I tried my best to be realistic and not discouraged when, for example, when I failed the interview or something like that. And if I do fail that, I will ask them why I fail and how I can improve for the next application. Most of them, they will say, they will recommend some books, for example, or some courses in LinkedIn, learning or degree, or some blogs that I can read through in order for me to prepare myself for the next application.
All right, Priscilla.
Yeah, so the question was, what were the biggest challenge for me when I was switching jobs? I think in Germany, especially, it was underselling myself because I didn't speak German, especially when I moved here. I also didn't know anyone. I just felt like despite coming from like a really comfortable background and also job in the US, I felt like I would have to like be more open to saying yes into places or even like conditions that I probably wouldn't go for. So my biggest tip for people looking to switch jobs is like really don't undersell yourself. So like what Cindy mentioned about confidence, I really struggled with that my first 2 years. So I've been in Germany for like almost 3 years, like a little, like somewhere in the 3 year mark. But my first 2 years was really difficult because I felt like because I didn't speak German, because like I'm a foreigner, I always just thought that like I always felt like I was inconveniencing people, even in the workspace and even when I was looking for jobs. So that really, like that mentality ended up also shaping like the opportunities I would take. But as soon as I gained that confidence and I realized that like, there's so many people here who are like in high positions that don't speak. Okay, sorry, I take it back. In Berlin, there's a lot of people in high positions that also don't speak English, German, and there's just a lot of all around, it's like the talent here is really international. And once I really internalized that, that was what helped me envision like my role more differently. Because I do want to say when I moved to Germany, I would typically look for like immediate full-time jobs or even like a manager role. But because I was so keen to like moving to Germany and I didn't have that confidence, I remember taking even like a traineeship for a few months, which in retrospect, I don't think I needed to do. I just was overly, I just feel like I wasn't confident enough at that time. So my advice for anyone here who feel a bit nervous or uncomfortable by the fact that they're not like, fully integrated into Germany, I would just shake that off, because at the end of the day, it's really all about the appearance and the confidence that you have in yourself. And for me, the way I built my confidence was through a lot of market research and a lot of like informal coffee chats with people who are in my same industry. And when I realized that, when I was like researching the salary bands, I saw that this is what I deserve. I started realizing like, okay, I don't have to be saying yes to these opportunities. I can just be a bit more bold. And secondly, I also started speaking to a lot of other people in marketing, people who are equal level from me, people who are much higher. And I think the common thread and pattern there is that most people are they're just kind of like, they're no different than me, and they're probably no different than you. The only big difference is the confidence and how they position and pitch themselves in like interviews or job switching opportunities. So just like keep that in mind. And I think speaking to people will really help that confidence building. And I had something else to say about like the salary thing. I'm kind of forgetting. I wanted to just essentially say, don't sell yourself short. Oh, I remember. Okay, another thing that helped me a lot in my confidence and overcoming that challenge was when I started working comfortably at like the different jobs that I was in, like for fun. I know this sounds probably painful, but for fun, I would just apply to jobs and like interview just to see how I can speak to recruiters and practice, so that I don't, like at the time I had a lot of great jobs, but I wasn't looking for a new job. I just wanted to practice. And I also remembered I started aiming for ranges way higher than what I was making and way higher than what I ever like communicated in any recruitment or interview. But then I realized like when I communicated these like high ranges, so many startups and even just like companies in general were like, they were okay with that. And it showed me that, wow, I really was underselling myself. So with that in mind, that actually led to like my next thing. One of the ways that I was able to negotiate salary was through getting an offer from another place that like paid much higher. So I was able to renegotiate like one of my current contracts, and they gave me that raise and matched the salary. And I definitely want to say that took a lot of confidence in me. And it also showed me that, hey, like if I stand up for myself, I can do it and I deserve those things. So long story short, research so you know where you stand in the industry.
Yeah, in levels of negotiation, it's always good to know your stance, and to know information is power. And
Yeah.
so you need to know your information and be bold. You know, in Indonesia culture, it might be rude to, you know, challenge your up superior, but you need to not undersell yourself. You need to go for it and try to be, you know, risk taker, and try to have your portion. I think Cindy has an interesting story or experience in terms of negotiating salaries. And Cindy, could you please highlight more on your experiences?
How do you know? I mean, it's really nice. I mean, you go, girl. I like it. Um, well, it wasn't so easy either for me. I had to go through that experience as well, like applying and get into the negotiation part to know actually what my value is. But definitely the research is good. And it was kind of funny actually at that time during the negotiation. I mistook the number, and during the negotiation when they said, okay, Cindy, this number, and then I was quiet for a while, and I was a little bit surprised, also disappointed. And I think the recruiter, um it was a she actually heard me and like noticed that I was a little bit hesitated, and I hesitated. And so she said, okay, you know what, think it through. It's before I said anything. And think it through and get back to me when you are there. And then I said directly, well, no, it's all right. I know now, but I know it now, but it's kind of a little bit low than I expected. And then after that, she go straight to the high range, to the top range, which I'm really surprised about. It is, well, one thing that I would like to remind myself as well. For every offer that you got, I was told to never accept that. Do not accept your first salary offer because they will go towards the lower part of the range. So try to aim higher and try to kind of promote, because I said to them, I said to her afterwards saying that, um, well, I think I deserve more because of this, and that, as well as I got another offer from the other company. So yeah.
Amazing. I love that.
Mm. So in our previous discussions, you two talked about mentorship and how you found. So for example, Priscilla found a mentorship program in Berlin, which she's involved in, and as well as Cindy in Bavaria. And so starting with Priscilla, could you please iterate more on on why you got involved in this mentorship program, and what it has brought, well, how has it allowed you to overcome your challenges? For example, coming from a totally different culture, totally different place, and to a place where, you know, they speak different language and the culture is totally different. How has this mentorship program helped you in that sense?
Yeah, so I think my biggest emphasis is like beyond mentorship is just building a solid network in like Germany is really important. Like especially with me when I came here, I didn't know many people, and we didn't have anything like IPA Germany, like Indonesian Professional Association. And I really wish that was such thing back then, because I would be able to like easily connect to so many different people. So I'd say like beyond mentorship, like really find yourself a network, reach out to other people within your city, people at work who are, you know, within your field. Just building those like relationships can ultimately lead to, you know, mentorship, or even just building a community of people that are inspiring you, and also people that you can turn to for different advice, whether it's a career or personal advice. So that's like my first and foremost comment on like building a network and how really important it is, especially in a foreign country. Like to go deeper into that, beyond just like building a network, for me, I wanted to find people I could look up to, find people I can share like my career challenges about, and also kind of get their perspective and how they've approached such things and experiences. So for me in the US, it was easy because like I went to an American university and I was in a lot of different like business organizations that had alumni and just like people younger and older than me. So finding mentors in the US was easy, but in Germany, it was quite hard in the beginning. So I started off with cold emailing people or cold LinkedIn messaging people. That like usually works in the US, but here it really didn't. Maybe it's has something to do with like the cultural tendencies. But in Berlin, it wasn't until last year where I found like this nonprofit called like Mentoring Club. I think it was mentoringclub.org or mentoringclub.com. But like that was when I found a lot of really interesting people in marketing, and I was able to like reach out and like kind of like establish those initial friendships, what I'm interested in learning from them. So like finding such community to me has been quite helpful. I know people in the attendance, they're here from different parts of Germany. I would try to see if your city has like such community, whether it's like professionals in your industry or even like mentors in general for that city. Or of course, now you have like IPA Germany. You can definitely please like stay in the community so we could really build each other up. But I would say that's my experience in finding mentors and also a community when I moved to Germany.
All right. Yeah, and from Cindy, there's this mentorship Bavaria. Could you give us your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, so because I studied in Germany, and in a university, especially for the MINT, which is like mathematics, informatics, natural science, I think, and technology. Oh no, something, I have to look it up, but it's called MINT or STEM, and there is this Bayern mentoring, I think it's called like that, and that is local to the university. It's university in Bavaria. But other than that, there is also like byfit.com, which is sponsored by the Bavaria government. So is that. And other than that, currently, because I'm working, I actually asked my manager for a mentor, and I currently have a technical mentor who is looking through my codes and making sure I have it all nice and stay on top of the trend as well and the technology, and asking all the algorithmic questions. Is that the right way? Is that very optimized or not? And things like that. So it's really great. And the second one is for the soft skill part, how I manage my time, for example, or public speaking and things like that. So it has been really helpful to have a mentor who can give you honest feedback and not judging. So I can definitely recommend that.
All right, so for our last question, I wanted to prepare a question that would wrap everything that we have discussed into top tips for the audience. So therefore, out of your experiences, what top tips would you give to people thinking of switching jobs or are in the process? So let's start with Priscilla.
Yeah, that's a very valid question. I would say like building that network has been a huge component, because for me, like after a few years in Germany, I even like started to get referrals, like what Cindy mentioned, how she was able to get started. Like firstly, like building a network, whether it's in the Indonesian community or elsewhere, has been pivotal to career changes, because you hear of new opportunities from these people you meet. And secondly, like getting that referral is a great way to get your foot in the door. So try as hard as you can to like build that. And even so, like another case would be for you to interview or even have a chance to speak with the hiring manager in like such role. And let's say you don't get it, I would really encourage you to follow up and not only thank them for their time, but just express interest in growing in that field and also connecting on LinkedIn. That's definitely worked for me, where I was not qualified for the job, but I was really interested in learning more about like this industry. So we ended up getting like a follow-up coffee chat, and then we actually became friends through that. So although the interview didn't work out, I did gain a lot of knowledge through our friendship, and also just taking that extra step, reaching out on LinkedIn and just sharing a quick blurb about like my interest in staying connected and learning about her experience. So oftentimes people here are pretty keen to share about like how they led, like what led them to their career, and like skills that you should pick up to like better yourself for that role. So I would definitely encourage the networking part, and that can come in many forms, like I mentioned, whether it's people in your field or even connecting with hiring managers after you go through their interviews and meeting them.
All right. And what about you, Cindy? What are your top tips?
Well, those are very practical tips from Priscilla, and I really like it. Foremost, though, I think it's about your mentality. Like for every change, we need to adapt. So be open to it and try to embrace the new possibilities. Also, remember that growth and comfort, they don't coexist, so it won't be easy. And therefore, you got to be strong, because nothing is impossible when you put your mind to it. And when that happens, you'll be happy, I guess. Well, hopefully.
All right, so I'm afraid that's all we have time for discussion. Now we'll now entertain, I'm guessing, about like 5 to 6 minutes of until 7:50 of Q&A. And I think there's a lot of questions. So I think what we'll do is we're gonna send a FAQ afterwards to everyone. So we have we answer all of your questions. So yes, so we have 2 top questions now. So the first one is, do you have any tips in negotiating? So, okay, right. How do you, okay, right. Any tips, any tips in negotiating salary increase during performance review?
Sure,
Yeah,
I should go ahead and take that. So before performance review, or literally when you get into any job, what I recommend everyone here to do is create their own personal brag book. So it's not a literal book, but it's more so your personal document. So as you go on in the 6 months or the quarter, you type up all the challenges that you faced and was able to overcome. What are the big projects that you created big impact on? So as you go on, even before performance review, you already have a packet of things you can brag about. Of course, not literally speaking, but more so things and projects you can structure your performance review to. So of course, like maybe it's too late for that. So going back to your question, something that I would advise you on is like seeing how much tying your efforts into company metrics. So I'm not sure like what you're currently doing at your company, for those who asked, but like for marketing, sometimes it's really hard to tie marketing to revenue, because it's mainly sales that are doing that. And also with product, you're tied to like how many launches you have and like how smooth it is. And so for marketing, sometimes the metrics are kind of blurred, because you don't know to what extent like you're influencing the decision to buy. So I would try to get as specific as possible to like the improvement metrics I did, whether it's changes that happened from the previous month, and if that correlates with the revenue we're getting, or a lot of like numbers. I try to really guide everything according to numbers. So that's like first and foremost for building the performance review. I think also like throughout that time, I like to get feedback from my coworkers that I work cross-functionally with. So seeing like how I help them in what way, and in what way can I improve, just so that you go into the performance review completely self-aware of the gaps that you can cover. And in terms of like pushing for that salary bump, don't just say like, I have a feeling, but definitely base it according to like the market knowledge and the research you've done. Cindy and I both emphasize that a lot in this chat, like really research so you have the confidence to push and know your worth. So really do that research and see what metric you lie in the spectrum of different like salary points. So I'd be happy to elaborate if you want to follow up with me on like LinkedIn or even later on.
I think what I like from Priscilla, I think is this brag book you're talking about, this website that you have where you have all of the experiences you have had.
No, that one's just like that's more so just like for like when I have a resume, it's my online one. But no, it's like I just have a Google Doc of things that I contributed to. So in product marketing, I do a lot of product launches, but during that time, a lot of complications may happen. Let's say there's colliding priorities or like people quitting and I have to cover 2 or 3 roles. So I make sure I include that in my Google Doc and say like, okay, June 30th, like I'm covering 2 roles and this is what I'm doing to create impact. Or like, let's say I did a product launch and it went really well because the sales team was able to now like upsell clients. So I make sure I write that down so that by the time I have the performance review in like 6 months, I have all those things and like challenges I overcame already like recorded.
All right. So Cindy.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. That is definitely a good tips for me as well. And I'm guessing that we are going to have even like a deeper session during our next future events in IPA, right? Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. And
Right. Oh, okay, go ahead.
well, yeah, I mean, I think Priscilla as a manager can cover a lot more than I can say. So
Yes. So from Michael, we have a 3-part question. So first, what work visa is required to work in Germany? Start with Priscilla.
Okay. Cindy, feel free to cover any gaps that I'm missing. I'd say like for me, so blue card is ideal, but then I didn't get a blue card when I came here. I believe you need at least 5 years of experience to get a blue card and also make a certain amount of salary. I want to say it's like somewhere between 55 to 60. And when I first moved to Berlin, I was just graduating. So I definitely didn't qualify for that 5 years of experience for the blue card, but I went into it with just like a work permit. So if you get a company to sponsor you, and it's easier than you think because you just have to find someone that like are interested in your talent. That's a way. I know a few other ways include a language learning visa. So let's say you don't want to work, but you want to have the experience of being here and maybe doing a side job. You can even do a language learning visa and stay in Germany up to a year, I believe.
All right, and Cindy.
yeah, I mean, that is true. Working professionally, you will then get the blue card, which is valid for 4 years. And then depending on that, then you will be able to go either extend that or then go to the Niederlassungserlaubnis, which is the permanent residence for Germany, or the Europe residence permit.
Yes. Yes. So let's start with Cindy. How's life outside work?
How's life outside the work? Okay, I'm guessing it's with the colleagues related to.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. It's very different. Most of them, or most of us, because we are here in Germany, we tend to go to the beer garden every weekend, for example, and which is really nice. I mean, I feel that with Audi, Airbus, as well as with Intel, my current employer, and also we normally have like a board game night where we play board games together in either in the office or at someone else's place. And yeah, I like it. That's one of the thing I like working here in Germany, or maybe at Intel, because you feel like your colleagues are not your colleagues, but they are actually your friends. And I mean, they are the people that we spend most of our times with anyway. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's life outside.
And Priscilla.
So like, yeah, I guess that life outside of work. Okay. Like how I balance the two, or what do you mean?
So I guess like how is it, how do you balance it, or what do you do with, I guess, with your friends or colleagues outside of work?
Yeah, so I think similar to Cindy, a lot of my colleagues are super fun, and now that we're actually a remote first company, so they've increased the event budget, especially to hang out with your coworkers. So we've done a lot of different like events, whether it's like a fun dinner or like an outing with like some kayaks. That's been a really great way to just like stay human with my coworkers, so they're just much more than a screen. I think beyond that, outside of work, I don't know, there's like so much to do, especially now that it's summertime. I find that my hobbies change according to season. So in the winter time, I got really into TikTok, and I love to cook. So I started sharing a lot of different recipes, and some of those recipes like went viral, and I've been able to gain a pretty good following. And now it's to a point where like I work with different brands to promote and sponsor certain things. So outside of work, I like to do that. And like again, now that it's summer, I haven't been as active on TikTok, but I would want to say I think just like hiking, hanging out with my friends, lots of like barbecues, and just making use of the weather as much as I can before it gets dark again.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. And so I'm afraid that's all we have for the questions and sadly the session too. And so I would like to first thank the speakers for their insightful experiences. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. So I would like to first thank speakers for the insightful experiences and valuable tips in navigating job changes in Germany. For the audiences, feel free to contact the speakers via LinkedIn if you have any more burning questions. And so for your convenience, the IPA-D team will prepare a one-pager that summarizes the discussion today. To get this one-pager, please send us via a feedback via the form we will send to your email. So additionally, I would also like to thank the IPA Germany team who have made this session possible. So Devina Kemi and Melissa Uganda for being the logistics for this session, and Harsono and Georges. And last but not least, I would like to thank the audiences for giving us a chance by tuning in and participating in the session. I hope to see you again in our upcoming webinars and perhaps to see you as part of the team. Thank you very much, and yeah, see you later.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, don't forget to connect.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.